Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Constance Lewis. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Can you just start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Constance Lewis. I live in Bradenton. I have 3 children, 2, 5, and 7. I historically am a neonatal intensive care nurse and then transitioned into a women's health nurse practitioner, childbirth educator, lactation. And then after having my 3rd child and my son Miles having significant medical conditions, I had to step away as a nurse practitioner and build my own business at home. And I do fertility coaching, postpartum coaching, and I help parents get their children to sleep at night. So I'm a sleep coach. But then I decided to write a book about my son's journey. So I'm also going to be an author.
That's great. When do you sleep?
Oh, good question. I'm actually really serious about my sleep, being a sleep coach. So I make sure I get my at least 8 hours.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's start off with, what is your definition of inclusion?
Great question. So basically, inclusion to me is just creating space where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued, especially in their full, authentic expression. Not just about allowing someone a seat at the table, but it's about making sure that when they actually sit at that table, their presence is celebrated and their voice matters. I feel like in a world where children's literature and emotional development, inclusion just means representing all kinds of experiences, emotions, and abilities in a way that helps every child say, like, that's me, I belong here, I feel included.
Yeah, I love that. So growing up in your family dynamic, did you guys talk about things, or how did that go for you, about your emotions or any of that stuff?
Absolutely. So I had wonderful parents, and my mom especially was always encouraging feelings, expressing them in whatever way we felt appropriate, and supporting that. I think that that was really important. And I think that's how I kind of developed the skill as well. Although I will tell you, even as a parent, I sometimes get extremely triggered by my kids' feelings, and I try to fix it right away. Yep. And I realize that that's not really the goal. You can't fix their feelings. You can't get them out of that uncomfortable feeling as soon as you can. So that's also what led me to writing the book and trying to figure out ways to help them work through their feelings and also have them express their feelings without using words.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, for me growing up, we never really, I don't remember talking about anything or like talking about feelings. So for me, growing up that way obviously is not the best way to handle things, because you just keep it all in, and then eventually it's going to come out. So, that's kind of my background. That's kind of why I was curious how yours was. So that's great.
Yeah, I think that my dad was a little less on the side of that. He grew up in a very strict, structured, very disciplined family. And so it was difficult for him to express himself at all growing up. He really couldn't. And so I think over time he learned, and then just meeting my mom and so I had a good dynamic with, he was a little bit more on the strict side. His expectations were higher, and the morals, but also I think both sides really played into each other. But you're right. I think statistically, with our generation and a little bit older, we just didn't get, a lot of kids didn't get that. It was like, you suppress that emotion. I've heard parents say, older generation say, your kids are seen and not heard. Have you heard that before?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that lends into it. So I think the generation that's coming up now, and the millennial generation, is trying to focus more on allowing children to express their emotions because it's healthy. And then they turn into adults who can do it better instead of having anger and other issues.
Yeah, for sure. I remember suck it up, or I don't know. Some of it is I'm male, so some of it I feel like my mom.
Oh yeah.
She watches a Hallmark movie and she starts crying, which I don't really watch Hallmark movies, but if there's a we're watching a show and there's some kind of a sad scene, I mean, I'll start turning up, so I have some of that too. So I feel like that probably played into it, where those emotions were coming up, and then, I mean, it wasn't in a spot where, I mean, when you cried, you were, encouraged to talk about what was going on. So it all plays together for sure. But
Yeah, it can be uncomfortable for parents. I mean,
yeah,
even if you
true.
grew up in that situation where you were allowed or you expressed your feelings, it can feel really uncomfortable. So I
Yeah,
think that's why I wrote the books, because, and I'll tell you about the book in a minute, but
yeah,
basically it teaches parents how to teach our kids to express their feelings through colors, so we
sure.
understand what they're trying to say to us, so we
Right.
can bring up that conversation.
I mean, that's great because, I mean, I've said I didn't learn how to express my emotions growing up, so I mean, I needed to learn those skills somehow. So I feel like this is a great way, to help people learn those skills. Can you maybe, I mean, as much detail or not as you want to,
Yeah.
can you share a little bit about like your son's his medical journey and what kind of going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So at my son was born healthy newborn, no issues. And then at the age of 4, all of a sudden he just started having significant granule seizures, just out of
Okay.
nowhere. One morning, he just woke up. He said he had a headache, a bellyache. He threw up everywhere, and he went into a full blown seizure. So
Hmm.
shock, you know. We were told it was from fevers, which it wasn't. And then he just kept having seizures over the next 2 years. And we would go to different specialists. I went through 4 neurologists. It was a mess. This medication, this medication, this is the
Yeah.
cause, this is the cause. And
Yeah.
being a nurse practitioner, I have a lot of understanding of the medical field. So I was able to really advocate for him when I feel that doesn't always happen for
Yeah.
other kids.
Yeah.
And so because of the seizures, we had to do a lot of really hard things, medical appointments, blood draws.
Yeah.
He had to go to sleep a lot. He had to have IVs, like just everything, ambulance rides. And so I found that he was having a difficult time explaining how he was feeling going into those situations. And so he loved to dress up as a superhero, loved it.
Okay.
It's his favorite thing to do. And so I thought, if I could have him pick a color cape that represents his feelings, he doesn't have to use his words. He can just wear the cape, and then all of the people around would
Oh.
understand how he was
Mhm.
feeling and give support in that sense. So
Yeah.
in May of last year, he had brain surgery to remove part of his brain.
Wow.
And since then, he has had 0 seizures, but which is amazing.
Yeah.
But over the time of the seizures, through school, through sports, we've had to really figure out ways to allow him to feel included in those situations, without also feeling like something's wrong with me, in a sense, right? This is my superpower. How can we turn it around in a more positive way? So that's really his story, and why I decided to write the book and help other parents try to navigate that as well.
Yeah. How old did you say he is now?
So he just turned 7. Well, not just. In December, he turned 7. So
Okay.
the seizures started at 4 and
Okay.
continued up until 6. And then he had brain surgery. So it took multiple scans and multiple neurologists to actually find that he had a lesion on his brain. The first couple of people didn't see it on the MRI, and it was just, we think it's this, we think it's that, and nobody figured it out. And then finally, the neurosurgeon removed an entire temporal lobe out of his brain, with obviously uncertainty about how he was going to be after that. And he does still have some deficits with speech and word recall and things like that. But since that, he has had 0 seizures, and we're getting ready to wean him off his medication this month. So
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah, amazing story.
Yeah. So my daughter Cecilia, she at 3 months old, two aunts of hers are nurses at Mayo Clinic in Rochester. We live near there.
Yeah.
Noticed she was staring off, so we got her tested and found out she was having seizures. So she's been on seizure meds since 3 months old, and she's 22. So
wow,
we've had similar things. We took her, I mean, tons of scans, tons of EEGs. Took her to at one point for testing to see if she could do brain surgery, but she had seizures in multiple places in her brain, so they wouldn't be able to do it. So,
yeah,
but she's had 90-minute grand mal seizures, airlifted multiple times. So yeah, thankfully, I should knock on some wood. On my Facebook memories, I see, like, 10, 15 years ago, there's a lot of them going on. So I'm thankful that currently there hasn't been. But yeah, she's still on seizure meds. We just
Mhm.
Started trying to wean her off of one of them, and then just did a EEG, which we were able to put it on there, come home for 24 hours, which is way better
Wow.
than having to sit in the hospital. So yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh, it's isn't it horrible just seeing your child go through that?
yeah,
And I'm glad that she's doing better and really just finding the exact
yep,
medication and the lifestyle. I mean, anything can trigger it, really. It's like
sure,
life, stress, and as the older they get, I feel like they have
yep.
more triggers and more stress.
Yeah, and for us, it was never like this thing happens and then she has a seizure like every time. It was never like the same thing, so it was hard to
Yeah,
like if it was the one thing, okay, let's try to avoid that as much as we can. But it never was just the one thing. One time she's
right.
sick, she has one. The next time she's sick, she doesn't. It's like you can't even
Yeah,
know what's going
same.
on. Yeah,
And the doctors I would call and I'd say he's having more seizures or he had another seizure because he would have one every 10 to 14 days.
okay,
And the grand malls would come every 2 to 3 months, but the
okay,
little ones were,
sure,
there
yeah,
and they would say, "Oh, well, what have you changed? What is different?" I'm like, "Nothing." They
right,
always ask you that question. Did you miss the dose? No, I
right,
didn't. Oh my
yeah.
goodness, always something.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I don't know about for you, but it was like it got so she was having them so often. I'd just walk into the ER if she was there, and they'd point to the room, and I'm like, hold on, it's
Mm,
not good that you know me that well to
I
just point
know.
me to the room, and
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and I kind of got a little desensitized because I would be stuff
Mm.
would be happening, and a ER doctor would do something different than the last one. I'm like, why did you
Yeah.
do it that way and not the other
Yeah.
way? So I was at a
Mhm.
point where I could function, which was interesting too, because
Yeah.
some doctors don't like being questioned, so I came across that a
Oh,
couple times. I'm like, hey, it's my daughter. If something looks weird, I'm
yeah.
gonna ask a question. So
You
yeah,
should always, always, always
yeah,
ask a question, always, because that's
for
how
sure.
you get into situations where things happen that aren't
Yeah,
supposed to.
yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe do you want to share a little bit about like why you came up with the idea to write the book and share your story that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said before, Miles was having these seizures and he was having to go
Yep,
do a lot of really difficult things, doctor's appointments, blood draws, going to sleep and getting MRIs as you know they all have to do when they have seizures. And so
yep,
um and he's very emotionally articulate with his words, but obviously as he's going through seizures and having these
right,
post-ictal states, he wasn't able to really articulate his feelings. And most children cannot articulate their feelings with words. And
right,
so I thought, and I've seen a lot more with, especially Inside Out coming out, and just a lot of ways that maybe color can can bring out feelings. So what color something is. So
right.
I had a bunch of capes from Amazon that I picked that were all
Yeah,
different colors, and I had him pick the colors of what emotions that he felt that would match that. And some did kind of in line with what you would typically think as emotion, like blue for sad
right,
or red for mad, or he somewhat leaned into that. But and so after he did that, we explained to him, okay, when you have an emotion, a big feeling, you're not able to tell us how you feel, or you just feel off, you can go into your room and you can look through these cape colors and pick the one that you feel
hmm,
best suits your emotion. And when you come out, dad, mom, whoever else is around you will understand what you're trying to tell us. They will
hmm,
hear out, will understand what feeling that you're having. So then we can support you. We can say, oh, Miles is feeling mad. Miles
hmm,
is feeling nervous. Miles needs to feel more brave, whatever the emotion is. And then we can support you. So I thought the book just came to me overnight. I
hmm,
woke up and I had a dream that I should write this book and what it was about and all the contents. And it just came to me. And I've never written a children's book. So it was
okay,
fascinating that all of this came to me. And I just
right,
wrote it all on paper. And my husband helps me rhyme it a little bit. So it's
okay,
more rhymed. And so basically, the book is about how Miles goes on a journey Monday through Sunday. Sunday, he's going to go to the hospital and he knows he's going to have surgery. And
okay,
each day, he goes through his closet and he picks out a color cape and he gives it to a friend in need that is feeling an emotion. So brave, nervous, silly, scared, anything. And he gives them the cape and he says, I use this color to help me feel this way. And so it's just a fun little book to introduce color to feelings that parents can give to their children. And if they don't love capes, my son loves capes, they could choose a different thing. Like my daughter loves tutus. So I'm actually
sure,
getting ready to write a book about hers and tutu colors.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
whatever you choose, you could use for that emotion. So that's really how the book came about.
Yeah, what age range do you say, or the target for the book?
Good question. I think anywhere between 4 to probably 10. I know there's some 10-year-olds that are starting to get away from feelings and
Yeah,
dressing up and things like that, but there are some that still are engaged in that. So I think starting out at 4 to
sure.
10. And my daughter's book is going to be a little bit on the younger side. We're going to do, 3 to 5 or 6. And then I have another son, Micah, who's 2, and I'm going to write one for him, but it's going to be for little babies and
Yeah.
toddlers. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This idea just came to me. Why do you think like adults don't do the same thing? Like, why don't we not like wear certain colors for emotion so other people around us kind of know what's happening?
That's a great question. Maybe I should write a book about adults doing that.
I was like, I mean,
Uh,
I'm like an adult. It would be helpful if I know like what's happening with somebody
yeah.
without having to ask them. You know what I mean? Like, wait, like
Yeah.
you can tell something's off. Do I ask a question? They want me asking
Yeah.
questions? I don't know.
That's a good way. Like if we
Hmm.
had different adult shirts that says like hashtag
Yeah,
I'm angry today or
yeah.
hashtag
There
I'm
you go.
annoyed or hashtag, something like that. Maybe I'll write that one next. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
I
just,
think
I don't know.
that
Yeah.
people ask me, they say, well, why colors? And I say, well, when I worked in the pediatric unit or Miles actually goes to cognitive behavior therapy for
Yep.
anxiety, for dealing with his things that he had to go through. I learned a lot from her and from just working with the children in the pediatric unit that we would say to them, can you color something for me about how you feel? And you would just give them crayons and a piece of paper and you would say, color me how you feel right now.
Hmm.
And I noticed that they would choose certain colors for certain feelings. And that just fascinated me that they were able to be creative about it. So I think that adults can do that too. You know how we have those
Right.
calming coloring books
Yep.
now?
Right.
So that would be something to think about as an adult.
Well, and I mean, I know. So my daughter was on an IEP, or I've helped other families with kids on IEPs, and
Yeah.
sometimes like you talk about how the child doesn't like want to ask for help because they don't want to raise their hand or
Yeah.
have the other kids think stuff. So you sometimes will put something like on the desk, like some kind of a thing the
Yeah.
teacher knows what you're talking about, but other kids might not. So
Yes.
it's interesting, like how like this would be a way to like you're wearing a blue shirt today that everybody knows that you're sad or
Yeah.
whatever that's attached to, and then kind of knows kind of what's going on. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
exactly. I think that if the book was presented in schools or preschools or wherever,
Right.
even elementary schools, and the teacher was aware, because my son has a 504.
Sure.
And he just, if he wears a color shirt
Right.
and the teacher can see, oh, okay, I see that, not
Yeah.
just him, anybody that's on a
Yeah.
504,
For
any
sure.
kid, obviously
Yeah.
he has uniforms that he has to wear with certain colors,
Yeah.
but, or even a pen or
Something.
something, anything. Yeah. I mean, we picked capes, but really, I want you to be creative with your kids and think of what do they
Yeah.
love the best? What do they love? Like my other son loves cars and he loves balls. Maybe he could do
Right.
cars. My daughter, tutus, so think of anything that you can think of. So really, the ideal is to include anyone and everyone into this conversation that has children that needs to. And if you're uncomfortable talking about feelings with your kids,
Yeah.
this is a great way to introduce it, because you can say, we're going to try something new. And when you're feeling a certain way, you can put on this color and or wear this or bring
Sure.
this lovey out that's this color. And I can understand how you're feeling and maybe help you better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a piece of the book? Well, so I mean, I'm better at talking about feelings now, but let's just say I
Yeah.
don't have any exposure to that. Is there a part of the book as a parent, that helps me like learn about my feelings and how to like explain them with my child correctly and stuff?
That's a great question. And it's not in the book, but we
Okay.
have a website that those resources are
Okay.
on, and I'm
Cool.
developing right now. Yeah, it is. I actually am putting together a poster that has emotions on it.
Sure.
And I'm also going to put together scripts for parents that they
Okay.
can use when they feel uncomfortable. Because you're right. I remember thinking before the concept of writing the book came to me, I remember how, as a nurse, especially, and as a mom or as a parent, when my
Right.
son would feel overwhelmed or scared or angry, I would just want to fix it in that moment. Like, how do I make him feel better right now? And that necessarily always isn't the best thing. Sometimes we want our kids to feel the feelings, and we don't need to fix them, right? We don't always need
Yeah.
to fix their feelings, but how can we be there to support them? And so it made me triggered. It made me uncomfortable. Like, oh gosh, she's feeling mad or he's feeling so scared. What do I do? What do I do? I got to fix it. I got to fix it. But then I realized that I don't necessarily need to fix it as long as I'm here supporting him and he's telling me how he's feeling through these colors, then I can bring up the conversation afterward. Right. And so that's why I thought developing these scripts for parents of how to talk to your kids about it if you feel uncomfortable was another resource, that free resource that we're going to add to the website.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You are right though. As a parent, you want to fix stuff, and it's like, no, we can't do that. We need to they need to go through those emotions. How can we help them when they're younger, when we're around, to help them, do it correctly and not learn bad, coping skills and those kind of things, for sure.
Yeah, slowly building their coping skills over time.
Yeah, which is another word I never heard about until 10 years ago. So.
So true. What is coping? I know. So true.
But then you look back and I chewed on my pencil and drew in class. So I had coping skills and was using them. We didn't talk about it that way. We just figured out ways to calm myself, I guess, and keep focused. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think all children learn to do that in some way or another, whether it's a healthy form or a not healthy form.
For sure. You talked a little bit about you had experience or exposure because you worked in the medical field going through this, and how you thought some people don't have that exposure. For me, I didn't know anything about disability, anything about medical issues before my daughter was born, so I had to learn it as I went. So can you maybe talk about, from your perspective, how maybe fortunate you were, or what your thoughts are on the medical system, and maybe advantages or disadvantages you had kind of being on the inside going through it?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that even me having a medical advantage and knowing so much, even though I didn't have as much pediatric knowledge, it was more neonatal for babies and then women's health, I still got a lot of pushback, and I got a lot of that feeling in my stomach that something wasn't right. And so I had a huge advantage because I know how to speak up. As a nurse, I'm always speaking up to doctors because I am caring for my patient. That is my number one. And if I feel like they're not doing something that I agree with for my patient, I will say something. It took me a while to build that confidence as a new nurse, right? But and so I felt that I had a little bit more of an advantage as a parent because I already have done this, right? And so that's where my advantage came in. But I still met a lot of resistance. I even had a doctor in the ER say to me, when I was told that his EEG was normal when I left the hospital, and then we came back for an ER visit because he had another seizure, and the ER doctor said to me, his EEG is abnormal. I said, what do you mean his EEG is abnormal? I was told it was normal by the neurologist. Well, you have information to the chart. Why don't you just look it up yourself? Aren't you a nurse practitioner? Literally, those words came out of this doctor's mouth. And I said, yes, I'm a nurse practitioner, but I'm a parent first, and I'm not a neurology nurse practitioner. It's not my job to look into my child's chart and see if their lab tests are abnormal. I said, do you talk to all parents like this? Because this is ridiculous. It was insane. And so I just can't imagine. And so I can't imagine. And I was put one neurologist said this medication, and then a week later, one neurologist said this medication. So think about it. If you're a parent that doesn't know anything about medications, and then all of a sudden you're given 2 medications, and now you're giving 2 seizure medications at one time, what can happen to your child? So I love the medical system because I work in it, but also there's so many disadvantages to parents who don't have a medical background and don't know how to speak up. So my one advice to you is always listen to your heart and your gut. If you have this really weird gut feeling, or you're just like, I don't know about this, or you're just scared or unsure, ask the questions. And if you get pushback from that doctor or that nurse, ask for a different nurse, ask for a different doctor. Don't be afraid to challenge the system, because you are the parent. You know your child's best, what's best for them. You know your child the most. And that's all that I always tell people when patients used to say to me, well, I read something else, or I don't think this is right. I'll be like, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let's look into it. That's a good medical provider is going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's very crazy that the ER doctor said that. I mean, I'm not super surprised. We had a couple, I'll just share 2 brief ones. One of them was, she was in the ER with a 90-minute grand mal, and I don't remember the medication anymore, but they were going to put a medication, and they were doing it via the IV to stop it.
Yeah.
And that time in the ER, the doctor's like, we gotta push it in slowly over 5 minutes, otherwise it's gonna burn her veins. So they like slowly put it in. Seizure stops. Has another seizure going along. They're trying to stop it. They came in like, you're gonna give her this med via the IV. The nurse took it, went into the IV. I was like, hold on. I'm like, okay. So
Yeah.
I don't know what just happened, but last time we had to do it this way. You guys did it this time. So either last time we did it way too slow, or you
Yep.
just burned the crap out of her veins. So which was
Yeah.
it? The doctor was not happy with them. Like, hey, it's my daughter. Like
Yeah.
something isn't making sense.
Right.
So that's when we ended up having like a protocol that was supposed to be followed. Had to talk to head of the VR, all this stuff. But it
Yeah.
was like, hold on, guys, either something's wrong. The other one
Yeah.
was she was riding the ambulance and she was young, so we'd always ride with her. And then one
Yeah.
time they come to the house and they're like, nope, you guys can't ride with her. You need to follow. And I was like, okay, this
Oh
is weird.
no.
I'm like,
Yeah.
this is weird, but it was 2 minutes away from the hospital. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to argue with them while she's seizing. I'd like
Right.
them to get her there. So get her there. They come in, they want you to sign the thing. The ambulance driver wants you to sign the form or whatever before they
Mhm.
leave. And I was like, sure, I'll sign it if you give me the name and number of your boss so I can ask him why I wasn't allowed in the ambulance.
Yeah.
He turned around, walked out, looked at his coworker or whatever. They stared back at me. I'm like, hey guys, I just want to know how to handle it next time, so I'm not
Yeah.
like, it's because so I talked to him like they shouldn't do that. I'm like, well, okay,
Right.
what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Argue with them there? Like I don't know.
Yeah. I
But so
know.
yeah, those couple times it's like as a parent also is like I had this growing up. I don't know why like medical providers and teachers are like God, like you couldn't question them.
Mhm. Yes.
Then
Yeah.
I saw those inconsistencies and I'm like, hold on a second. They're just
Yeah.
human. They're going off the information that
Right.
they're being presented with, what
Right.
their experiences are. And once I realized
Right.
that, I'm like, okay, some of them might not like it, but they're human like I am. I mean,
Yeah.
so just ask questions. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah. And everybody makes mistakes, even in the
Yeah,
medical field. It happens, right? I mean, even
yeah,
the very first time my son had a seizure, I wasn't even there. I was on a vacation with my husband, and my mom had to deal with this
okay,
situation. And she went into the ambulance with my son, and they had already given him 2 doses of the medication.
yeah,
And he just moved an arm, and they were getting ready to shoot him with another one. And my mom said, whoa, stop. I think that's enough. And she has no medical background,
right,
but she listened to her intuition. And thank goodness she did, because they would have overdosed my child. Isn't that
right,
wild?
yeah,
So yeah, so always listen to your intuition as a parent, no
for sure,
matter what, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just something anybody can do to be more inclusive.
I say start young and start with feelings. We give children language, if not language, we can give them tools, other ways to express their emotions. We empower them to understand themselves and others better. And so a practical tip I think I would share with parents, teachers, caregivers is to use visual tools like emotion capes, color charts,
Right.
story-based play, just so they can identify how they're feeling and they can name the emotion. Because when we start to model emotional literacy, we create a more inclusive, empathetic environment, because everyone's inner world is given space, given respect. And if children can learn to express their emotions in whatever way they are able to, I think that brings in more inclusivity to the world around them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your book, when it's coming out, where everybody can find it and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are hoping for a June 1st publish date. It is in final color revision with the illustrator right now.
Sure.
We're getting so very excited. We just actually got the final cover and the back cover this week. And so I'm going to put that on the website this weekend. But we're just in the final. So I'm thinking June 1st is the publish date. It's obviously going to be available on Amazon and on our
Sure.
website. But if you're looking to go to our website now, just to kind of look around and see, take a look, it's www.colorfulcapesoffeelings.com. So colorfulcapesoffeelings.com. And you can get all the information there. And if you want to sign up for the email list, we're going to send out a pre-order and when the
Sure.
book's going to be available.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I also have an Instagram. I haven't put much on it yet, but I'm getting to that. I'm
There
getting
you
to
go.
that. So if you guys are interested, I even have to look up my name. It's called colorful_feelings.books.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to put that all in the show notes.
Thank you.
Ready for the last question?
Yes,
Do you like spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
I actually do. I do.
You do.
Is that weird? I do like it. I grew up in the South, like Southern Virginia, and
Okay.
we cooked spam on our stove at least like my friends and me once a week. We sliced
Wow.
it on up and we ate it like fried bologna.
There you go. Well,
Yep.
I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam, where Hormel's located and the Spam Museum's located. So I've been asking
Oh my
everybody.
gosh.
And
That's
I live here in the town, and I don't even eat spam that much. So
oh my gosh. Isn't that wild? How I didn't even know that. I learned a fact about Minnesota.
yeah, yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you ever want to visit the Spam Museum, you got to come to Minnesota.
I should. I definitely should. I'm gonna come in the summer though.
That's true, but like in Minnesota, we can get up to like 110 heat index in the summer and negative
Oh my
50 in the
gosh.
winter. So we got the whole
Oh. Okay, maybe the fall. How about the fall?
fall. Well, before
Awesome.
we started recording, I think I told you we had come down to Orlando for a conference in January. When we left Orlando, I think I like 65. When we got to Minneapolis, it was negative 30. So we
That
had
is
like a 100-degree change in that from getting on the plane to getting off the plane.
yeah, I bet your body was, oh, what's happening?
Well, then as we were going to get the van that was at the parking ride, I was like, why didn't we not like have somebody like drop us off and pick us up so we could just walk out into a warm car instead of hoping the
Yeah,
car is going to start and everything's
yeah.
freezing cold. But
And
I'm
then
like
what do you
next time.
yeah, next time. And what do you put on? I mean, you
That's
you
the other
have
thing. Yeah,
like
that's
you
the
have
other thing.
17 layers, and then
Yep.
when you get to Florida, you take them all
Yep.
off, and then you have to put them back on in the
Yep.
airport or something when you land.
Well, I think I ended up like I had my winter coat in my van, which was
Mm.
negative 30, and then I just had like a sweatshirt on. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's there, but it's freezing cold. So for a
Yeah.
while, while it's warming up, you're like, oh dang it, I should have done. But yeah, you don't want to take a winter coat with you to Florida. That's
No way.
carrying it around. So
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.